There is a fascinating article that has just come out last couple of days called In the Year 2024. It's written by James Rickards. He is the author of a book called The Death of Money, The Coming Collapse of the International Monetary System. And I've asked him to come on by for a few minutes and talk to us about this because my kids ask me all the time, Dad, what do you mean? What do you mean the money's going to collapse? What do you mean the system is going to shut down for a while? What does that even look like? And the way I explain it to them, and I'd like Jim to take this in greater detail and correct me if he thinks I'm wrong, what I mean by that is an event unlike anything, at least this generation, and I believe anything like the world has ever seen before. A catastrophic failure and reset in a way that we don't know what we're doing for a while. We all kind of have to figure it out on our own, and most likely it, at least for a while, ends in martial law and ends in some pretty frightening times. The Great Depression would look like a picnic, quite honestly, and James is here to comment on that. Do you agree with that?
I agree, Glenn. I think we can see it coming. One of the things is, let me talk about what it's not going to be like. I don't think we're all going to be living in caves, eating canned goods. It's not the end of the world. What it means is that
we make it through this.
We make it through, but it's a different world when we come out the other side.
Yes.
It's Mussolini's mantra was, everything in the state, nothing outside the state.
Right.
That was their succinct summary of what fascism was. Well, you get to a world where the government controls all the money. Everything's, first of all, is digital. Right, so we all think we have money, but how much cash do you actually have in your pocket? A couple bucks, maybe.
Right.
You get a direct deposit of your pay. You pay with credit cards. You pay with debit cards. You pay online. You wire money. Etc. It's all digital. Well, that means it can all be controlled. That can all be taken over by the government. Number one, easy pass toll booths, and we all like the convenience. I like them too, but those are interdiction points where they can use facial recognition software, license plate scanning, etc. They don't like you. There's a lot of. I know you have. A lot of contacts in Silicon Valley. You talk to people out there.
Yes.
They like the driverless car. A driverless car, that sounds kind of cool. You can read a book or whatever.
Right.
Well, driverless car is not driverless. It's just being driven by a system, and the system involves GPS and computers and central programmers. So if they decide they want to lock the doors and take that car to a local police station, then you're, in effect, your car is a prison. It's a portable jail cell. And if they don't like you for political reasons or other reasons. So these are all things that are here.
I want to say this. In case you don't know who Jim is, I want to, because this sounds crazy, doesn't it? It sounds like, a Blade Runner or a conspiracy theory. And I just want to, just a little bit about him. Portfolio manager at the West Shore Group, an advisor to the international economics and financial threats to the Department of Defense and the U.S. intelligence community. So you also didn't you do the first, you were the...
Financial war game, yep.
Yeah, you did the first financial war game at the Pentagon. So this is not somebody who is like, yeah, I live in my mom's basement, and and you also were right there in 1998, front row seat, with the Wall Street bailout of the hedge funds.
I was the general counsel of long-term capital management. That was the hedge fund that collapsed in 1998. It was bailed out by Wall Street, $4 billion. We put it together in 72 hours. We filmed the runways, Glenn, and brought it in for a soft landing, but I can tell you I was there. We were hours away from every market in the world closing.
Okay.
We tried to get that done before Tokyo opened that morning, and we did. But, so now it's kind of like old news or whatever. But that's how close we came. Of course, we came that close in 2008. So, yeah, I had a front row seat on that one. I like to say, in America, when you screw up badly enough, the lawyers take over. And I was the lawyer, so I got to do that.
Okay, so
I've seen this.
You've seen this firsthand. You look to history to be able to forecast what is coming. Mm-hmm. You have. You told me last night on television that you have seen... and the world has seen financial markets closed. I wasn't aware of World War I, the stock exchange closed for that long.
Well, in World War I, the Secretary of the Treasury, McAdoo, closed the New York Stock Exchange. I mean, the Board of Governors closed it, but basically under influence of the Treasury for 5 months from the beginning of August to the beginning of December. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the reason. At that time, we were still on a gold standard. The U.S. was neutral. Remember, the U.S. was neutral. Yes. The other combatants wanted gold because they knew they needed to fight the war. So they started dumping U.S. stocks. It's not that they hated U.S. stocks, but you sold the stocks, you got cash, you get the gold. and they were shipping the gold to London. I mean, down at South Street Seaport, they were pallets of gold going to Europe. Well, they closed the New York Stock Exchange to alleviate the selling pressure. They reopened it 5 months later. But what happened was, people were very creative. They went out on the street. They went on New Street, which is behind the New York Stock Exchange, and they had a street market. But you had to trade your stocks by appointment and bring your certificates down and all that. But New York Stock Exchange was closed for 5 months. They wanted to suspend, all the combatants suspended gold redemptions. Interestingly, John Maynard Keynes, who's vilified as an anti-gold guy, he was the loudest, most persuasive voice in favor of England staying on the gold standard. What he said is, look, Germany, Italy, Belgium, all these other guys, they've suspended. If we, the UK, the City of London, stay on the gold standard, we'll have good credit. We'll be able to borrow the money, fight the war, and win the war. And he was right. J.P. Morgan, the original, Jack Morgan, his son of Pierpont Morgan, went out and did a multi-billion-dollar syndicated loan for Europe. So yeah, there was a lot of blood spilled on the field, but they won it with finance.
Okay, so who can win with finance this time? Because we're all in the same boat. Okay. What happens? The banks are closed. Yep. Let's say that, because I think there could be anything. Anything can happen. It could be Iran closing the Straits of Hormuz, and that could just send things spiraling, and all of a sudden we're just out. This could happen in a 3-day, 4-day, 5-day period where all of a sudden the world has changed. So the banks are closed. You don't have access to money. You pull $300 out of the ATM, and that's all you can get.
Gas and grocery money. That's about it.
And that could go on for
weeks, months. Hey, if you've got your gas and groceries, what else do you need? I mean, that would be the point. They wouldn't steal your money. You just couldn't get it. By the way, it's not just banks. It's money market funds.
Right.
You wouldn't be able to redeem those, close the stock exchange. They say, hey, we're not stealing your equity,
right?
But we've converted it to private equity.
But you say they wouldn't steal things. Well, they did in Cyprus.
It's state power. Yeah.
I mean, the state comes in and says everybody gets a 50% haircut. So whatever you have, you lose 50% of it. Right. And that, to me, that's theft. So this is all going on. The state starts to crack down. Everybody's kind of pinned into their own place. What does it look like afterwards?
Well, now there are a couple states of the world, so maybe everyone will just acquiesce. I mean, that's actually a lot of history. When things get bad, people just say, hey, don't bother me, I'll go along with this. But you could see the outbreak of money riots. You could see people in the streets protesting not, social conditions, but financial conditions. And of course, we have a heavily militarized police ready to respond to that with, tear gas and flashbang grenades, and they're armored up with all this money from the federal government. So they're ready.
How much of this makes you feel, how much of this is you're like, I don't want to believe this, but it's just the fact? Well, because it really sounds nuts. Jim.
Well, when my first book came out, Currency Wars, the Financial Times reviewed it, and they said, let's hope he's wrong. And you know what I say? I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, me too.
I don't think I am, or at least if I wouldn't be writing and doing interviews and so forth if I thought I was wrong. I'm trying to warn people. People say, you're giving predictions. I don't really think of myself as doing predictions. I think of myself as giving warnings. By the way, this doesn't have to happen. I don't think this is a Clockwork Orange where it's inevitable, but I think it's likely because the things that you need to do to prevent it from happening are actually, in our politically dysfunctional age, they're very unlikely to happen.
Like?
Well, you could break up the big banks. I mean,
not going to happen.
Well, it's not going to happen. See, this is my point. You're right, Glenn. There are a set of things you could do. By the way, we're in a depression. This is not a
recession.
Weak recovery. This is a depression. As Keynes defined it, he said, a prolonged period of below-trend growth, which neither collapses nor gets back to trend. That's the period we're in right now. Could be heading for a collapse for other reasons.
That's the actual definition of depression?
By John Maynard Keynes, and I agree with that definition. See, people say, I say we're in a depression, people go, you're nuts. GDP is not going down. We've been recovering for 6 years. Where are the soup lines? I said, well, the soup lines are Whole Foods because now you get food stamps on a digital card. By the way, I'm not disparaging people on food stamps.
Yeah, I got it.
But it's a digital card. You can go into Whole Foods and get your soup. So we have the soup lines. They're just over at Whole Foods. We all know that labor force participation, the only reason unemployment is not higher is because labor force participation has collapsed. But the point is this 2% growth, 3.5%, which we are, and in the short run maybe 5%, which we saw between 83 and 86. If we're capable of that and you're actually growing at 2, it's the gap between the 3 and the 2 or the 5 and the 2 that's depressed growth. That's the definition of a depression. But a depression is structural. It's not cyclical. You cannot solve a cyclical problem with a cyclical solution, which is money. Money printing is fine if inflation's a little high, you want to dial down the money supply, or unemployment's a little high, dial it up. That's a cyclical solution, but we need structural solutions. We're not getting them.
You told me off TV yesterday, you said to me that behind closed doors, people who know, and they say it.
Sure.
They know what's coming.
Yeah.
And they also admit to you they don't have any idea what they're doing.
That's exactly right. I had dinner with one of the members of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. Very bright individual. No need to give up names.
Sure.
We had to go to Chatham House rules. And I looked at this individual. I said, well, the Fed's insolvent on a mark-to-market basis, meaning if you took their assets and marked them to market, it would wipe out their capital.
Yeah.
Fed's leveraged 80 to 1. They've got about $60 billion of capital and $4 trillion of assets. So the individual said, no, we're not. And she said, no one's done that math. I said, well, I've done it, and I think others have done it too. And I kind of looked at her, and she knew that I knew that she couldn't fool me. So she goes, well, maybe. And then in the next breath, she said, well, we are, but it doesn't matter. So she went from no to maybe to yes in a matter of 30 seconds.
Right.
But her last point was the most interesting one. She said, well, maybe we are insolvent on a mark-to-market basis, but it doesn't matter. Central banks don't need capital. Really? Well, that might be news to most of the American people. I mean, your money, the money in your pocket, is a liability of the Federal Reserve System.
Right.
It's their liability. And they're insolvent, so you have a perpetual... I look at a dollar bill, I learned in law school, read the contract. It says Federal Reserve note. A note is a liability. So what is a dollar bill really? It's a liability. It's a perpetual non-interest-bearing liability of an insolvent bank. That's what your money is. So if we all think it's money, then it actually can be money. It's a question of confidence. But confidence is very fragile. It can be lost very quickly, and that's the problem. When it's lost, when that confidence is lost, what do? What's plan B? I think the main plan B is the one we've been talking about. We just lock everything down. In 98, the solution was to print money. In 2008, the solution was to print money. When you get to the point where you can't print money anymore, just don't let people have their money. Just lock it down.
Okay, I've got about 2 minutes. Can you tell me what the average person should be doing right now?
Well, one thing they should have is some physical gold. Now, don't go overboard. I recommend 10%. I wouldn't say sell everything and buy gold. I don't think it's good advice. I think 10%.
Because it can be taken. You don't.
It can be taken. Well, you make a good point, Glenn. Nothing is risk free. There's nothing out there I've ever seen that's risk free. It's a question.
And you don't have any idea what's coming.
Correct. So it's a question: how much risk, and are the risks correlated?
Right.
And can you prepare for different things with some diversification? Sure. That's the right way to do it. But one of the things I like about gold is it's physical. It's not digital. People go, I have money. I said, really interesting. Where's your money? Well, it's in the stock market. It's in the bank. I said, really? That's all digital. It's in a computer. You may get a statement, but that's all digital wealth. Putin has a 6,000-member cyber brigade. You don't think they could shut down the New York Stock Exchange tomorrow? They can.
So when you say have cash on hand, do you believe have actual access to cash in your house or someplace?
Well, let's say you did. Try getting it. And try going down to the bank and getting $5,000 of cash without being looked at like a drug dealer.
Yeah, I know.
Right, they will. I mean, they'll file a suspicious activity report. They'll file a currency transaction report, the SAR, the CTR. And you're a perfectly honest citizen. You just say, you know what, for precautionary reasons, I'd like some notes. I don't want it all in digital form. You will be treated like a criminal, even though you're a perfectly honest citizen. So that's easier said than done. But for listeners, they might want to try it. Physical gold, I like it. It's not digital. You can't hack it. You can't erase it. In 2010, the FBI and Department of Homeland Security found a Russian attack virus in the NASDAQ stock market operating system. This was not a criminal gang trying to get your Social Security number. This was Russia military intelligence inside NASDAQ. That was reported, by the way, in Bloomberg. So it's not everything I'm saying you can document, or I can document. None of it's conspiracy stuff.
James Rickards, the name of the book is The Death of Money, best-selling author of Currency Wars, The Coming Collapse of the International Monetary System. If you want to understand what's coming, you want to be a leader in the next phase of what's coming, you need to understand it. And this is a great way to understand it. The Death of Money, The Coming Collapse of the International Monetary System. Jim, thanks a lot.
Thank you.